Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another week of Tits Up. As always, I am Megan, and I am joined by my fabulous co host, Sam. Sam, hello.
Hello, everybody.
So, listeners, today we are going to have a little bit of an announcement by Sam. So, Sam, I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell the people what they want to hear.
Thank you for that lovely intro, Megan, and putting the spotlight on me. You know, I love that. As some of you may or may not know, I am actually 21 weeks pregnant. So,
Yay!
yes. So that is very exciting. Also, as I'm sure most of you can imagine, who have been in this position, very nerve wracking, even when you don't have a cancer history, let's say. So I'm definitely feeling all of those fears, anxieties, excitedness, fear, you name it. I probably felt
Fear.
it. Fear. And I don't want anybody to think I was hiding it necessarily, but the truth is in my opinion, I don't necessarily think there's a safe time to announce. Some people say 8 weeks, some people say 12 weeks, then some people say second trimester, then some people say, oh, wait till you're testing an anatomy scan, right? And then some people say wait till your viability time frame, which is closer to the 24-week mark, I guess. But in my experience, I have done most of those things, and I did feel confident sharing it with friends and family. And you guys are my friends and family, so it's only right to share it with all of you. I'm about halfway, so I'm due in July. That's very exciting. Little summer baby.
Well, I have been incredibly excited for you, but let's kind of talk about, the fear thing. I mean, anytime you're a first time parent, I would imagine, I mean, I haven't had kids, but I would imagine that it's incredibly nerve-wracking. But then you add the cancer diagnosis on top of that. And, I'm sure that you've talked to your doctors about this, especially since you were triple positive. So you have the ERPR aspect to this. So what have those conversations looked like with your doctors? How likely was it that you were going to get pregnant, and was it a surprise?
Yes, so thank you for all those questions. I'll do my best to answer all of them. If I skip over, please let me know. Um, to be quite frank, I have been slacking on my oncology cancer patient side. And I don't want to say that's because I'm not aware of it. I'm triple positive, so I'm very aware of it, especially considering I was on tamoxifen when I conceived. Not a recommendation to do that, obviously. That being said, I just moved, for those of you who don't know, to the Dallas area. So I've had to switch all of my care, including my oncology, OB, all that kind of stuff. And my first priority was getting OB care, obviously, because I'm pregnant. So I've
Right.
established that. I have some great doctors. I have, an MFM I go to. Fantastic experience with all of them. And this week, I'm actually going to be looking into oncologists and stuff like that. And I think my plan is to get a scan without contrast just to see I'm due for one. So it was recommended that I seek out an oncologist and do that. So I will be doing that soon. And I was told that it was okay, other than the contrast part. And as of right now, baby looks healthy. Um, but when I was first diagnosed with cancer, when you get your initial diagnosis, the oncologist is going to hand you maybe a binder or a bunch of pamphlets about a bunch of stuff. And, you know, one of those was egg freezing and stuff like that. And I was intrigued by it, obviously, because I was in my early 20s and I was like, well, why are you handing this to me? Like, I'll be able to have babies, no problem. And I didn't know at that time that, chemo and chemotherapy treatment actually kills off your eggs. I mean, obviously, I knew it killed off your healthy cells, but I did not know that there was a potential that I would not be able to conceive naturally. Not saying that all my eggs would be dead or anything like that or gone. Not sure what the right terminology is, but just that it might be harder. And a lot of women that are trying to conceive post chemo, post treatment, that kind of stuff, post tamoxifen, do have to do IUI or IVF or some other form of assistant treatment. Or if you get a hysterectomy, you have to look into, do I have eggs? Do I use a surrogate? Do I use donor eggs? All of those types of things. So I had a lot of those fears and concerns, but what it came down to was I did not want to delay my chemotherapy treatment because it was recommended that I start as soon as possible. And freezing your eggs and doing that kind of stuff does delay your treatment. So
Yep.
I was like, I'm young. I'll be done with chemotherapy before I'm 30. So I still have a decent chance of trying to conceive in my mind. And I think I just kind of leaned on the optimistic side of that. And I said, if I'm meant to conceive afterwards, naturally, I will. If I need some assisted type of therapy, IVF, because it's a very similar, if not the same exact process you go through when you go to harvest your eggs and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, I can do it after, no big deal. I'll still be in my 20s was kind of my mentality about the whole thing. And I kind of brushed it off because I was very focused on treating and getting rid of my current cancer. So that was kind of my mindset during it. It was very I don't want to say melancholy, but I was very much like, it'll be okay. It'll work itself out in the end. And I
I
did
mean,
do
it makes sense. Like, first things first, I mean, if you're not around, you can't have babies. So make
right,
sure that you're still around first. That makes total sense to me.
right. And I also think it was if I chose to froze my eggs at that moment, I felt like it would have put more pressure on having kids at that moment. And I
Yeah.
really needed to not have that be my focus. I'm a very all or nothing type of person, and the only thing I could focus on was cancer and chemotherapy, not children and eggs. Um, and it was kind of like, oh, well, we'll see what happens after. And, I was totally prepared to do IVF or IUI, and luckily I did not have to do that, but it was still a very big concern. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, I was planning out the days to try and conceive, if that makes sense. It was definitely a surprise, a very happy surprise, because nobody expects to get pregnant that soon after finishing chemotherapy, let alone at all sometimes. So it was definitely
How
a happy
soon was it
surprise.
after chemo?
Um, so I officially finished Kidsila in September, and then
Of 23. Yep.
mhm. And then I found out I was pregnant in November.
Wow.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I think kind of the takeaway, like the happy takeaway from this is it is still possible for some people. I mean, I have friends, other friends that were diagnosed in their 20s, and they are still to this day really, really worried that it's going to be a non-option for them down the road. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, everybody's situation's different, and their treatment's different, and the outlook for having kids is different for everybody. But for somebody in your situation, I think that is a really nice thing to hear, that it isn't completely off the table. It absolutely could still happen.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not off the table. And like I said, there's definitely a lot of fears that come along with it. Technically, I was supposed to be on a few years of tamoxifen before I even considered going off to try. Let's say. So that's why I say it don't. It's not like I was counting down the days and like, oh, I'm gonna show everybody what's gonna happen. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a very happy surprise, and it just happened to work out. The and also it does become harder to conceive after you're on tamoxifen for a significant amount of time. Um,
Does it?
mhm.
I didn't know that.
it
I
can
mean, I'm
take
not
a
on
really
tamoxifen, but
right.
I just haven't paid attention to that.
Yeah, well, it's different for everybody, obviously, just like cancer in general. But I know women that have been off tamoxifen and their periods haven't returned naturally. So um,
Yeah, that's right. I have heard that.
exactly. So if you know anything about how children are made, right, like that makes it a little bit harder. And then they kind of feel defeated. Or say you're in your late 20s and you do 5 years of tamoxifen. Now you're in your early to mid 30s. That's a whole different percentage type of ball game. Um, so all of those things can play into it. Like I said, I was on tamoxifen only for a few months though, so I don't think that was as big of a factor. I truly think my little baby was trying his hardest to make his arrival, and once the door opened, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna show you" type of situation. Um, which is my little joke I like to say. But anyway, it does come with a lot of fears because tamoxifen can also cause birth defects and stuff like that, not to mention chemotherapy stays in your body for an extended period of time or affects your body, to an extent beyond just the day you had the infusion. So that was obviously a big concern of mine. So I did a lot of genetic testing and carrier testing for stuff like that. And everything kept coming back okay. And I still to this day I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, and I think that's just something we can all resonate with in having cancer, because it was never just, oh, you had cancer but you'll be perfectly okay. It's
Yeah,
you'll have
everything else is
cancer.
fine from here on out.
Yeah, it's you have cancer and you need to do this or you need to do that. And that's kind of how it was for me when I got diagnosed. It felt like gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to do this 18 months, 2 years of chemotherapy. Then you want me to do 10 years of hormone therapy? And that never sat well with me. I know, like I said, my oncologist was definitely supportive of taking a break to have a child and all of those types of things. And, their studies not support that. But if I would have waited that long, I'd be in my mid 30s.
Yeah.
um, so it's kind of like, I don't want to say a guessing game, but prioritize what kind of matters most. And obviously, I didn't expect to get pregnant. I'm very thankful that it happened. And I'm very thankful that my baby is healthy. That is not the case for everybody, but it is possible. And I attribute that to my overall health in some ways, probably. And also that I did do mostly all of the recommendations for treatment and stuff like that, and continue to try and take care of my body to the best of my ability. Um, and luckily, my ovaries and everything like that were okay. But if you would have asked me prior, I had no idea. I'd never had them looked at. I'd never conceived before. I'd never been pregnant before. So there was really no way to know. I think it may have been a different scenario if I already had a child, or if I had already gotten pregnant before. But another thing that might be a little TMI was like, I also didn't have a period the month I conceived, or the month prior.
Hardly TMI here. Hardly.
um, so my point to that is, you don't think you're going to conceive, when you're in that situation. Again, I'm very thankful for that, but it's not something you consider. I didn't even know that you could get pregnant if you didn't have a period that month. I thought it was a very stringent type of cycle. Apparently not. Apparently your body will tell you exactly what's going on and when you're going to conceive, which is kind of crazy. Yeah.
I think it's wild. I saw something on, I don't know, it was Facebook or Instagram or something the other day. Um, and it was somebody talking about how nuts it is. And I agree that when you are an adolescent young adult with breast cancer and AYA with breast cancer, you are forced to make these decisions very quickly. Like something that should probably take months, if not years, to consider and determine. We're put in a position very often to make those decisions within days or weeks. rather than months or years. Um, I mean, I am beyond excited for you. I've been beyond excited for you. And that's why I really, really wanted to do this episode, because I want people to hear that it is definitely possible. It's not just a I had chemo, therefore I can never have kids. And I feel like some people really do go into that melancholy, as you said, type of mindset of, well, this is never ever going to happen for me. And, I mean, maybe not. I mean, I'm not going to blow smoke up anybody's ass. Maybe not. Um, but it isn't a 100% absolutely not, because
Right.
it happened
But
to you
maybe
and it
so.
happened very quickly, but maybe so.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important. I think I'm hesitant to kind of talk about it because I don't want anybody to feel like I'm trying to showboat or say, "Oh, look at me! I did chemotherapy and now I'm pregnant." It's completely the last thing I expected, um, and not only because I'm still trying to navigate the whole survivorship aspect of that, and now I'm like, "Oh snap! I'm gonna have a baby in the summertime," which once again I'm so grateful for. But being somebody who's in their mid late 20s, I'm scared as shit to have a baby. If you ask me if it's scarier being pregnant than cancer, I would say hell yeah, absolutely. I have to feed this thing 24/7. I have to keep them alive. Like what is that? I didn't have to worry about any of that. All I had to do was show up, get in the chair, get cut open. Like that's easy sauce. Taking care of a child? No way.
Yeah, that doesn't go away. you're
Right.
you're stuck with that one.
Right. There's no and again, it's a great thing, but there is no kind of guide for parenting in a way. Obviously, there's parenting books and blah 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 blah, and you can talk to your parents and talk to other parents, but something that I think is very unique and individual, just like I always say cancer and treatment is very unique to every individual, is also pregnancy and children. Just because your child did this doesn't mean my child's going to do this. Just because your child cried, maybe mine won't. Maybe yours was an angel and mine will cry all of the time. I don't know. And there's no real way to know, which I think for somebody who's type A and kind of a planner, I'm like, ooh, what's going to happen? Like, how do I do this? And I can have this whole plan of how I think things are going to go. But ultimately, the baby will decide what happens and how that's going to go, just like cancer will. And, your cancer or your tumor or your chemotherapy is going to decide exactly how you react. Same thing with recurrence. Because I am triple positive, that means that getting pregnant, I don't want to say is frowned upon, but it's just not the safest thing in some circumstances because your hormones skyrocket when you get pregnant. And being as somebody who has hormones that drives their cancer as well as her too, it can be kind of scary. So like I'm plagued by that, which is why I'm gonna be proactive and try and get a scan and do all those types of things. And as soon as my baby comes out, I'll probably be back getting another scan, just because you can never be too careful. And I don't know what's going to happen. Again, I didn't expect this. There's nothing that says, "Oh, if and when you get pregnant after cancer, you're not going to get cancer again." The reality is it's more likely that you will get it. But at the same time, I chose to prioritize my family, and having a child was very important to me, one of the most important things to me. I think I'll always be plagued by the fear of cancer returning, but the fear of never having a child scares me more.
Yeah. How has the whole pregnancy been?
Hmm. Like feeling like sickness or
Yeah, yeah, all of it.
okay. Um so I think it's really nerve-wracking, especially at the beginning. So I knew really early, um because I was sick pretty immediately, and it was like intense sickness. Like I mean, like I probably threw up 20 times a day easy. Um
Awful.
Right. And I was thankful for it in a way because they tell you when you're really sick, that means that everything's okay. They tell you to worry when you stop feeling kind of pregnancy symptoms, but at the same time, I didn't feel all the symptoms. Like one of the first pregnancy symptoms I think is like tender and sore breasts. I didn't feel any of that because I have
Right. We don't
no
have them.
feeling. um so, there's that, but also I was very, very plagued by, the fear of miscarriage and that happening, especially because I was on tamoxifen. Um, so just the risk of that was higher. And I actually told a couple close friends of mine, and they said, "Oh, well, you probably shouldn't say anything, until you get to this week or this stage." And that's kind of what I was referring to at the beginning when I said, like, there's no, in my opinion, there's no safe time
Yeah.
to say something. There's women that are 35 to 40 weeks pregnant and end up having a stillborn, unfortunately. There's women that are 4 weeks pregnant who can miscarry that never knew they were pregnant. And so I just think there's no way to really gauge that. And it's kind of your comfortability and what you're comfortable with. So it's really individual to the person. But I was super sick at the beginning, probably up until about 6, maybe like 18 weeks is when I started feeling a little bit better. I still get sick, but not nearly anything like the first trimester. Definitely have some smell and food aversions and stuff like that, but I don't think as bad as some other women. So I think it just kind of depends, but it's I think it's better now because I can feel the baby moving and like kicking. So that's always reassuring to me, especially at night. I don't know why. It's like a party at night for some reason.
That's that's what I've heard from a lot of people. Also, it's very apparent to me that you are feeling a lot better. I'm thinking back on a few of the episodes that we recorded, and poor Sam is over here with like those little not chews, but like those hard candies that like take away the
Preggy
nausea.
pops. Yeah.
Preggy Pops. I remember looking at you in the camera and you just looked like you wanted to die. You were just
Yes.
so miserable. So just the fact that you're talking right now is heartening for me. I love it. I can definitely tell that you're feeling better. I mean, I'm sure it's still rough. And every day is probably a little bit different, but that
Yeah.
makes me happy.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely a lot better. I had to fly here actually when we moved because I couldn't even ride in the car for like over 40 minutes without having to pull over and throw up,
Oh,
just because of like the motion in general. And I think also I will not blame baby 100%. I will say that I was very sick during chemo all of the time and I threw up all the time. So I think it was a combination of that plus just natural pregnancy sickness. And then also my mind thinking like, "Oh, I'm just going to get sick, so I might as well just be sick now." And I think I thought to myself, I people say like, "Oh, if you throw up, you'll feel better after." No, that's bullshit.
no.
That's bullshit. Because I was like, "Oh, I threw up 5 times in the morning. I'll definitely be okay." No. And also, you'll crave I don't have any, like, crazy cravings, but, like, I'll be like, "Oh, this sounds really good," and then once it's in front of me, I'm like, "Oh, no, no way. Like, I'm not eating that."
Never mind. Pass.
Yeah. Um, so I think that just kind of having chemotherapy sickness combined with the pregnancy sickness was like, whoa. And I definitely underplayed it. I thought that pregnancy would be a breeze because I just went through cancer and chemo treatment. No, 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 no. Um, I will say though, if you are somebody who has no symptoms while you're pregnant and it's so easy, more power to you. That is not the case for me. And I know that's not the case for a lot of women, but if that is you, I'm so happy for you. um, but I cannot relate. Yeah, definitely a learning curve and something you kind of have to swallow each day and say, okay, at least my baby's happy and healthy, hopefully. And it will be worth it, right? And come to an end eventually.
The one thing that I always think is crazy, I mean, you always hear about these like quote unquote mommy wars where, moms say like, well, you might have one mom that's breastfeeding and another mom that is doing just formula or something. And, moms get up on their soapboxes about, breast is best or, formula is just fine or, I've even seen that go back and forth about like morning sickness and morning sickness, just like pregnancy, just like being a parent and how you're going to parent, um, and how you're going to raise them. I mean, obviously, we can't breastfeed. That's just a non-option. So I guess fuck me if breast is best, but is your baby's going to be just fine,
Fed
But
is
I see
best.
fed exactly. Fed is best. Um, but it always blows my mind when women kind of don't realize that maybe, the morning sickness or the symptoms of being pregnant versus the actual birth, whether you have a C-section or a natural birth or whatever. It always is crazy to me when it seems like these other women just don't understand that sometimes you don't have a choice. And why would you ever say what is better or what is worse? I guess I don't understand that. Have you run into any of that so
um,
far? Like any of these mommy war things? Or are you trying to like keep your head away from all of that?
yeah, it is definitely. So I will say I'm in a mom group about babies due at the same time as me, and there's a lot of conflicting kind of things going on, especially when a first time mom, for example, like one thing I'm learning is like first time moms don't know anything that they're talking about. There's just no way that we could know anything. But somebody who's had a child before or two kids before suddenly knows everything. And that's something I just solely don't agree with whatsoever, especially because there's nothing that says those moms are doing any research. The only thing they have is, yeah, you raised a kid, but so have a lot of other people in the world.
Right.
That
It's not
doesn't
saying
mean
that
that.
they all turn out great.
Right. um and my doctors haven't, said anything to me negatively about that. One thing I am kind of concerned about is like leading up to the birth and like having to tell all the nurses and everything like that. I think I'm just going to politely ask that we take down all the breastfeeding signs around the room
Yep.
and, just ask that we don't mention it. I don't need to go see the lactation consultant.
Sure
I'm
don't.
good.
Sure don't.
Um, and that's kind of my take on it. Just like kind of cancer shaming, it's very mom shaming is super real. And there's certain moms that will have this $2,000 bassinet, and there's other moms that will have a $40 pack and play and use it as their bassinet. There's no right way or wrong way, in my opinion. But at the same time, if you have the means and you want that $2,000 bassinet, get the bassinet. If it doesn't work for your baby, boo hoo for you. Buy a cheaper one, right?
Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I didn't realize that there was such a, I guess, stigma against like baby stuff or baby brands, and I understand that. I mean, I'm not dressing my baby in Gucci or anything like that. That's not me because it's just gonna get thrown away anyway. All I'm saying is blowouts and all those types of things. Some of
Uh-huh.
them, some of them, I'm okay with throwing away. I'm not gonna wash it. Okay, like that's just not me. Other moms that would probably make them cringe, like cloth diapering. Not for me. Do I support whatever whoever wants to do that? And if you have the time, space, capacity, and mental sanity, absolutely. Am I gonna do it? Absolutely not. Am I gonna kind of look at what dyes, fragrances, and things are in those diapers? Absolutely. But again, I'm not 100% bamboo cloth diaper this and that. That's just not my forte. To each their
Yeah.
own, though. Just like, absolutely, I think breast milk is great, but there's also babies that are allergic to their mom's breast milk. Just happens that way.
Yep.
Does that mean that, you know, they're a bad mom, or there's something wrong there? No. I literally don't have the physical capacity to breastfeed at the same time. Like, there's no guarantee that somebody's, a lot of things happen when I've done a little bit of research on donor milk and stuff like that. And depending on how it's processed and shipped and stuff like that, there's can be a lot of complications and a lot of risk, especially when it comes to the, freezing part of it and all that kind of stuff. Now, that being said, I've done some research on great formulas as well that I just probably won't list their names because I don't want anybody thinking that I know best, or the formulas that I'm going to try or whatever. Once again, the baby will decide when the baby's out, right? But to the best of my ability, just like we do research about what to put in our bodies, I'm doing that research for my future child. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that makes me uninformed. There's nothing else I can do other than having that experience of feeding my child and learning what works and what doesn't work. So I do think the moms go a little crazy when it comes to the mom shaming, I guess. But I think it's because they think they have all of this experience, and they do, with their own child to go
Right.
off of. But in my opinion, that doesn't apply to everybody's child, let alone half, let alone a quarter, let alone this, let alone that. And I think it's just very hard to base it all off of one person's experience or one person's journey of raising a child, because that's why there is how many different formulas. If you can't pronounce half the ingredients in there, like I don't know what that's to each their own. It's like food, right? I like my fast
Yeah.
food absolutely sometimes. At the same time, am I conscious about what I pick up at the grocery store and put in my body? Absolutely. Does that mean you have to be? Absolutely not. Fed is best. Whatever that means for you, I'm totally okay with. And I think that everybody should just be supportive of that. If as long as your child is healthy and happy, then we shouldn't be concerned. It doesn't matter if their clothes come from Walmart, if they come from Gucci, if they come from this, if they come from that. But I think that also goes into, like I said, cancer shaming and stuff like that. It's everywhere. I think it's just a natural thing. Oh, I've been through this, so I know this. Let me tell you how it's gonna
Right.
be, or la 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 la. And that's just not true. You can have your
How
own experience, but it doesn't relate.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Um, how has your I mean, you said that your doctor has been, very supportive, and I know that, like, you're moving doctors since you moved locations. But they didn't frown upon it. Just this kind of maybe throws a wrench into things. But how has your overall, like, family friend group reacted to this? And the reason I'm asking is, like, I'm remembering, I believe it was Courtney who we had on, and she was talking about estate planning and all of that, after a diagnosis. And she now has 3 kids. She was diagnosed in her 20s. She now has 3 kids. And each time she was saying that her family kind of had a tough time with it, the tough time supporting her in that, because they felt like it was kind of increasing her risk to get it again each time. Have you experienced any of that, like with your family, friends, group?
So yeah, so I'll start off by backtracking a little bit. My doctors in Texas have been great, very supportive. Even the MFM, like I said, he was just concerned that I hadn't had an oncologist yet and really wanted me to get a scan, which I appreciate because I was so
I don't know
focused
what an
on the baby.
MFM is. Sorry.
It stands for maternal fetal medicine. It's basically like the high
Got it.
risk doctor. So
Got it.
sometimes it could be both. In my case, I wasn't able to get in with a doctor that specialized in regular OB and high risk. So I have an OB and then I have an MFM that I go see as well.
Got it.
Um,
Okay. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no,
Apologies.
no. Yeah, I should have said that, my bad. I'm like, I totally know all these acronyms now. It's like when you first get diagnosed with cancer and people are like DMX or BMX or SMX, and you're like,
It took
"What?"
me like 2 weeks to finally figure out what DMX was.
Mhm, mhm. So when people are like MFM, I'm like, "Oh, that's me." I'm like, I to be quite frank, I was like OB, like separating OBGYN for the longest time was like I was like, "What is going on here?" So my doctors, not my oncologist, but my original OB in California, that was not very supportive. Like my first appointment, they asked me how this happened, how I could let this happen, if I was aware of everything that was going on, and all of those associated things made me feel really bad about it.
Shit.
Which I understand to an extent. Again, we've talked, I have triple positive, and I'm pretty sure even if you didn't have triple positive or estrogen, progesterone positive, I'm pretty sure just conceiving, being pregnant increases your cancer risk anyway, regardless. But that being said, again, what was scarier to me, having cancer again or never having a child, never having a child is a lot scarier to me. Maybe that's because I haven't experienced that, and the thought of never experiencing that literally shattered my heart. Experiencing cancer again, I'm like, been there, done that. I'm a pro with that. I know what to expect. I know what's coming. Um, and I didn't have that experience, when it comes to children conceiving, pregnancy, all of those types of things. So something was almost taken away from me before I even had the chance to do it because of cancer. And if I let that plague my entire life and every decision that I make, it's just not realistic, especially when your cancer is triple positive, because quite literally everything, stress, stress increases hormones, right? So I would love to sit here and say I'm never stressed or any of that type of stuff, but that's just not reality. And there's no magic, we talk about this all the time. There's no magical food, there's no magical exercise. Yes, exercising can reduce your risk and all those types of things, but maybe the peace I'll feel and happiness when I have a child will reduce my cancer risk. You don't know.
You don't
Um,
know.
but what I do know is that if I got cancer in 5 years from now and hadn't had the opportunity to get pregnant, I think I would have really regretted that. Um, so that's just kind of my take on it. But back to the family, I did have close family that wanted me to use a surrogate and do all that kind of stuff because again, getting pregnant increases your risk of developing cancer again. But at the same time, I got diagnosed with no family history, no reason why in my early 20s. So to me, it's always been a if not how then when type of situation. I'm like, well,
Right.
if I got cancer when I was at my peak health literally in my 20s with no reason why, I'm just like, when will I get it again? Because even with all of the chemotherapy, tamoxifen, I still had a double digit chance of recurrence, which doesn't seem like much to people. I get that. But when you had a 1% chance, single digit chance of getting it,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
then you go to double digits, it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess when is it going to happen? And if I spent my whole life waiting for that to happen and avoiding all of the things I wanted to do prior, I felt like I wasn't doing myself justice. It was doing myself a disservice, pretty much. Um, but once that close family and stuff actually found out I was pregnant, I think they were very excited and relieved once they found out, like, I'm healthy, baby's healthy,
Yep.
all those types of things. And sorry, I probably alluded to it, and I keep saying baby, but I am having a boy. So
That was gonna be my
obviously,
next question. I mean, I know, but
yeah,
for the listeners, that's so exciting.
yeah. So I am very excited, especially because that way I'll have a son to take care of me, if and when I get sick again. So,
And that's so fucked up that that's where our brains go all the time. I mean, mine
Mhm.
does constantly.
Mhm. And, like, there's this sick part of me that, like, obviously I'm not I the genes, the genetics, I talk about this all the time. I think that's all BS. I think if you're gonna get cancer, you're gonna get cancer. That's just how it happens. Almost like half 50% of the population will get cancer at some point in their life. And I know that men and males get breast cancer too, but there's almost a sort of relief that like I'm having a boy because I'm like, oh, maybe this means he won't get breast cancer, or, or won't
Yeah.
have to go through that. Um, but also, he'll have the experience of his mom having cancer prior to that. So I think he'll have like a good sense of resilience beyond that and hopefully have a great way to treat women in the future. Um, but who knows? All I'm saying is I know that's irrational, but in my mind, I'm like, whew, okay.
I don't think it
I'm
is
having a boy.
irrational. I mean, before cancer, I mean, I just have it all over my family even though I don't have the gene. I have it all over my family. So before I was diagnosed, I remember thinking my future child that will likely never exist, but that's a different topic. I remember thinking, if it's a girl, am I passing something down to them? And then, I would flip flop and go back and forth like, well, by the time she's grown up and it comes, maybe they'll have a solution, they'll have a cure for it. But then, my mom got it at 37, I got it at 35, and they still don't have a cure. I'm not I just went off on a tangent. I'm not saying don't have babies and don't have girls. Like, it will be fine. But I don't think it's an irrational thought or fear. Um, I don't think that any of our thoughts and fears are necessarily irrational. I mean, they're all based in something, whether it's getting pregnant or, fill in the blank with anything else that we run into on a daily basis. Should I eat the ice cream, or whatever? It all comes from someplace, and it may be kind of a dark someplace, but that's kind of why I love this whole cancer community. You can be really dark and irreverent, and people understand it. You can make the jokes that make everybody else uncomfortable, because we're all having those thoughts. We're all having those fears and those concerns.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, and
huzzah for the boy.
yeah, no, I would be thankful either way. I would just be, paranoid if it was a girl, even though I'm paranoid now, obviously. But I just think it's a whole another level because women, we talked about this too, but women tend to think, oh, we did something or we're doing something to cause this cancer or whatever the case may be. So we automatically assume it's going to happen, to our children or to our daughters, whatever the case may be. And just like you said, even in your case, like your whole family, I'm the only one in my family that has cancer. And I don't have any genes. I don't have any blah, 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 blah. So there's just no reason why, but I still have that fear. I'm like, oh no, it happened to me. So it's definitely going to happen to you.
You're the first in a long line.
Mm-hmm, which is just silly to think about, but that's kind of the mindset that I think most cancer patients and survivors get put into just because of what we went through. And when you can't say, oh, this is why this happened, it brings on a whole other beast of its own.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I can kind of justify it by saying I'm getting kids out of the way now, so that way I can go back on tamoxifen,
I
and
was gonna say, do you need, like, I assume you get off of tamoxifen during
yeah,
this, right? Because
yeah.
it's not a good thing to be on. Okay. And how soon after do you go back on it? Has anybody indicated that to you?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming my new oncologist will talk to me about that and we'll kind of go through that. But I think I'll definitely go back on it at least for a couple years. Not that I'm even talking about having another child because I don't even have one yet, but I don't know. I know people say like, oh, the 2 year gap is like good. And so I will definitely try and do some tamoxifen after, but I will say that like I am a tamoxifen hater. I'm not a fan
Mhm.
of it. Um, mood swings, night sweats, hot flashes, all the above. I just felt like it really killed me. Not literally killed me, but like killed me on the inside, you know.
My
um,
heart. Killed my heart.
yeah, I was not a fan. I know some people take it and they don't even notice it, which is awesome. I'm hoping that maybe I could do something else, or maybe they'll have something else. I don't know. But yeah, I was not a fan of it, but I will definitely listen to my oncologist, weigh out the pros and cons, do all those types of things, because obviously I was on it, uh, when I conceived and prior to. So even though I didn't like it, I still did it. That's all I'm
Yeah.
getting at. We don't have to like
Uh,
everything we do, but sometimes we still have to do them.
yep. Yeah, I was gonna say mood swings, hot flashes, night sweats, all of that. It's my life also. I mean, there's really no escaping it for any of us, whether it's pre-menopause on tamoxifen or post-menopause on an aromatase inhibitor. It's you're not getting out scot-free.
No, not at all. Um, and regardless of the cancer, I did want to try and have kids before I was in my 30s anyway, just because of, without cancer, your chance of conceiving naturally significantly decreases when you're over 30, let alone 35 and stuff like that. So not encouraging anybody, but it absolutely, just like Megan was saying before, maybe not, but maybe so, and it could be a really good thing. At the same time, that doesn't mean neglect your overall health, to pursue those things all the time. I'm lacking in the oncologist department, but I'm keeping myself on track here by saying I'm going to hit them up this week. And I don't really have another option because another doctor's already told me to. So can't go to my next appointment and act dumb and like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that, huh? So
Completely forgot about the oncologists.
yeah,
Yeah,
what was
that
that
doesn't usually
again?
skip your mind.
Right, right.
Oh man. Well, I'm super, super excited for you. I know that all of our listeners are going to be too. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to finally tell everybody because I've known this the whole, like, not the whole time, obviously, but I've known this for a while and I've been very, very excited about this. And it's also been just so, so sad and so sweet to see you like miserable during our recordings and saying nothing. And I just want to give you a hug from afar. Just, oh, pumpkin. So
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you're feeling a lot better.
Yes, definitely feeling a lot better. It's definitely, a little bit. I think you get bits and pieces of relief during it, or at least I did. Like when I got my NIPT test, I got to find out like the gender, and I got to find out how likely he was to have any of these types of things, which isn't a diagnostic indication. Obviously, like you would still have to do more tests to confirm. It's not just because, oh, this test says this, so it must be this. But anyway, I was really concerned about that. And then I was like, oh, I'll feel so much better once I get this back. And yeah, I did for like a day, right? And then I was like, oh, but what if this, and this happens, And then I didn't know that tamoxifen can cause birth defects and all those other types of things. So I was like, oh no, like I'm setting myself up for failure, even though I didn't know it, type of situation. But I also think those are things we don't necessarily communicate about, because I think if doctors, oncologists communicated to specifically AYA patients about children, pregnancy, it would encourage kind of the situation, which I totally understand. But at the same time, like when you're dealing with women under 40, those are the childbearing women. Okay. So they're going to want to have kids, especially ones that have not had kids, or ones that have a further along diagnosis and think that they don't have time to have any more kids. Um,
Right.
so I totally get all sides of that. Not that, again, I'm encouraging, talk to your doctor and do whatever you need to
Yeah, I
do.
think it is. I think it is also really important to note finding a doctor that is used to dealing with women of childbearing years, let's call them. Even though I ended up getting a total hysterectomy, my oncologist was fantastic. And she was saying, like, look, if you do want to get off of tamoxifen at some point so that we can get you to this point of potentially being pregnant, we can do that. And this is a topic for another conversation for another day, but I eventually landed on total hysterectomy, obviously. But she has been amazing in so many different regards, like um under 40 but going through menopause and all of the effects that has on your body. Everything will say drying up and not being able to sleep. Like, I usually cannot fall asleep unless I take a medicine for it. And she at least knows to ask these questions. A lot of times I just kind of figure, well, this is misery and I'm just going to have to deal with it. So when I see her, I just kind of say, yeah, everything's fine. But she knows to ask the right questions. And I think that that's very, very important for all of our listeners to hear and to understand, that, when they are kind of feeling out oncologists. Sorry if you guys can hear that. That's my dogs. um, but when you are starting to feel out oncologists, ask them what considerations they take into account when dealing with a young cancer patient. They're just a whole different bag of worms or can of worms or however you say it, a whole different area of things that they are going to need to make sure that you're doing all right with, because it's the oncologist's job, of course, to keep you alive. But when you have a really, really good one, it's also their job to make sure that you are living a quality life, not just getting those extra years under your belt, but that it's how, you're living in a way that you can maintain and you're not miserable the whole time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree.
That's my
And I
little
can,
PSA.
yeah, no, I think that's totally valid. Like when I would go in for when you're in active treatment, I think I saw my oncologist every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on when my infusions were. And I would see her after, and she's like, "Oh, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, good." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, good." And I'm like, "Yeah, the usual." She's like, "So how many times did you throw up? How many times did you have this? How was your diarrhea?" Right? Because that's all such a normal to you at that time. So I totally
Right.
resonate with what you're saying. And especially, we haven't really talked about this, but I'm sure a lot of women, especially ones who've been pregnant before, when you become pregnant, people act like, especially doctors, they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. She's pregnant." And
Hmm.
I'm like, holy crap, imagine being pregnant and having cancer at the same time, and trying to battle that. And I think my MFM was just really glad that I had already done treatment and all of those types of things, because he's like, we see women here, obviously, that have cancer and are pregnant. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, how can
I
you fight
cannot
that battle?
imagine.
Yeah, I know, I can't either. I'm not that I'm hoping we can find somebody, but I would really love to get the insight from somebody like that, because I could not even imagine battling that. I mean, I struggle with it now. I'm like, I feel guilty. I'm like, should I have gotten pregnant? I'm like, should I have done this? Is this the best nurturing environment for my child? Even though I think so, because I'm healthy, right? But I'm like, I still got cancer for no reason. So something's not going right there or somewhere, which I know is ridiculous. But at the same time, like I said, I couldn't imagine dealing with it while actively being pregnant. I mean, how do you prioritize your health with okay.
I mean, honestly, it gives me anxiety just thinking about it. I have a girlfriend from college whose sister, her older sister, while we were in college, was pregnant and got breast cancer during her pregnancy. And all I know is that it turned out fine. I don't remember because I wasn't paying attention in college. I wasn't paying attention to anything.
You were
Um,
drinking.
yes, ma'am. Was having a good time. Um,
You could
but
do
I
that and not get hot flashes.
all I want to do is just get hammered, y'all. I just can't. I'll be paying for it for like 24 to 48 hours. Um, but yeah, if there is anybody that's listening to this that knows somebody, or if they themselves were pregnant and had breast cancer, reach out to us, because I think that, this is something that happens. And I don't necessarily want to say frequently because I don't know what the actual numbers on that would be, but it happens enough that we've all heard of somebody in that position. And I think that that would be a really valuable voice, I think, to have on the podcast at some point. So let us know.
Yeah. No, we would totally, like I said, I would love to hear from them, even though I'm sure it's totally difficult to talk about. But I just think would definitely be great to hear from. But I definitely enjoyed our conversation today, Megan.
Me too. I'm so excited that finally the world knows. We're
Yes.
just absolutely, absolutely thrilled for you, Sam.
Yes. I'm very happy too. So I will try to keep baby talk to a minimum. But thank you all for being a part of our community and listening and sharing in the joy with me. Also the fear for all of you.
Fear,
Um,
fear, fear.
yeah, moms that have or survivors that have been moms or that are thinking about becoming moms again. Like I can only imagine. I totally feel all those all those fears. So please write in and let us know how you feel about that. We love to hear from all of you, and we love to hear everybody's experience and how they deal with that. And I think a lot of women really resonate with that.
I agree. And in the antithesis of mommy wars, I want to see everybody write in and be cheering Sam on. And if you have been in the same situation, put some of her fears to rest if you're able to.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
And it,
listeners. Thank you. Thank you so much for another week. Thanks for tuning in. Sam, we love you. And we're very
thank
excited
you.
for you.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Love you all
Talk
too.
to you all next week.